Hello, and welcome to Fresh Blood, a podcast about killing it after 40, where we prove that new blood does not necessarily equal young blood. Here to discuss what it takes to have continued success through life, I'll be your host, Jolie Downs. With over 20 years of executive recruiting experience, I've learned how much we can grow and be inspired by other people's stories. I'm excited to share that with you here on Fresh Blood. Today, we are speaking with Takatoshi Shibayama. Takatoshi is the head of sales for Copper, a crypto prime brokerage and custodial service. He runs blockchain education on the side, educating enterprises and business leaders on the POW blockchain. He is also the host of Future Design podcast, where he converses with visionaries to help empower listeners with perspectives on how we can challenge the social norm and build a better future. Previously, Taka was an analyst and investor of distressed corporate situations for 17 years. He started his career with investment banks such as JPMorgan and Goldman Sachs, later joining the U.S. hedge fund Davidson Kempner Capital Management and co-founding 3D Investment Partners in Singapore with nearly $1 billion in assets under management. Amazing. I'm excited to learn more. Takatoshi, thank you for joining us on Fresh Blood. Please, could you tell us a little bit more about your story and getting to where you are today?
Yeah, it's a very huge honor for me to be here. Thank you for inviting me to your show. So I guess my life story is quite long now that I've been living 43 years. So a lot to unwrap there. But I guess I could start off by talking about my childhood. I was born in Japan and I moved to the US when I was 5. And I stayed there for about 10 years and moved back to Japan, graduated university in Japan, and then moved on to working for investment banks. So,
okay, really quick. I want to know what that was like, because that's a big thing to happen. 5, you moved to the United States, and then 10 years and you moved back to Japan. What was that like, the back and forth for you?
Yeah, as a child, I remember going to the US. It was such a life-changing event for me that even at age of 5, I still remember very clearly when I landed in the US. And I come from a very kind of suburban town in Japan, and I landed in JFK. And I lived in Long Island in New York. And I just remember just going down the highway and just looking around. Wow, there's so much space in this country. The highway is so wide. There's so much nature around. And I landed to my house and it was big compared to any average sized house in Japan. US houses, even if it's like a normal house, it was big. It has a front yard, backyard, it even has a pool in backyard. And I was thinking, wow, this is insanely huge place. I remember going to school back in those days, and obviously I didn't speak a word of English, and just trying to adapt to everything else was such a challenge for me. I remember being excited going to a new school and trying out new things. But of course, there's a language barrier. I do remember having struggles, obviously, making friends, communicating with students in the school, but I think I picked up the language pretty quickly. I remember the teacher told me about after 6 months, I was fluent by that time.
Amazing.
So yeah, that was great. But I remember because the neighborhood I used to live in, which is Lake Grove in Long Island, and it was and this is back in the 80s, right? Early 80s. Mm-hmm. It was a very American society, meaning it was very white. And I was the only Asian person living in that whole neighborhood, or even probably a whole district. And I used to get a lot of stares and a lot of people looking at me from afar. And I was thinking, I must stick out because I don't belong here.
To deal with that. That's a big thing to be dealing with at a young age.
Yeah. I never really experienced that in Japan, obviously. So I just thought this is what it is. I just took it as it is because people, of course, if you're living in a place where you all is just the same ethnicity, I must be something interesting to them or something different for them. I I didn't think it was like racial. I was 5, so I don't understand all these kind of things. So maybe it was some kind of racial thing. I have no idea. But just getting the stares all the time was a little bit weird to me. But I thought, I'm a foreigner in the different countries. I just have to take it as it is, and I just went with it. Of course, as I start to understand, there are certain nuances to those stares, and people coming up to me and saying, "Oh, I saw this Chinese guy over there. Is he your brother?" That kind of very childish like comments, obviously. But yeah, I had to, there's a lot of that things. And then also in school, I felt like I didn't achieve a privilege as some of the other kids probably had. And that was a little bit of it was a little bit stressful for me in that sense. But usually it was fine. I actually loved my childhood living in the States. I think the biggest issue for me was actually going back.
Next question, because that's a big, then going back is another huge, another culture shock going the other way. And did you retain your language? Was it still fluent when you went back?
Yeah. So I attended a Saturday Japanese school, and this was subsidized by the government. And I attended it on Saturday every morning for 3-4 hours. And was I able to attain it? Not so much, because I was very immersed in the American school system, friends and everything. So my Japanese level didn't really exceed 5 years old, even though I went to school. So in that Saturday school, there was quite a divide. So there were a lot of kids from Japan who were living in very kind of Japanese neighborhoods, I would say. And they retained the culture, retained the fashion, what every Japanese kid would retain as if they were in Japan. And now as a kid, very immersed in American culture, I look different, I act different, I speak different. There was a little bit of a clash in that school. And I expected that going back to Japan, because I knew how Japanese kids, and then when I moved back, obviously there's a lot of bullying involved, because I think for Japanese people, they have this little inferiority against not being able to speak English or having a mixed culture in that sense. So they tend to act out in a way of bullying. And thank God it was not the time of social media and all these things, because if I leave the school, then it'll be gone. But it doesn't follow you all the way home. Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
But
how did you deal with it though? Because that's, we all, so many of us have dealt with bullying, and even as adults, sometimes we do still deal with bullies. How did you deal with it? Did you have anything that was successful for you?
Yeah. So I know a lot of kids that break down in that sense. And I've seen a few kids that were in my school who did return from Western cultures. And I thought that if I could maintain who I am a mix of a bit of American culture, Japanese culture, and I was pretty happy of that. But I find that a lot of kids, they tend to choose. So some said, you know what, I reject Japanese culture. I'm just going to stay American and just live my own life. And then people who said, maybe I should conform to Japanese society, and they turn completely Japanese. And I thought that was a little bit sad, because you're not, the thing is, you're not completely American because you have this heritage. And in order to embrace both is very important. Obviously, there's a lot of mental courage in order to say, this is who I am. And obviously, being a teenager in that kind of very sensitive time frame of your life, it's very hard to have a very strong, solid platform for yourself to say, this is who I am. Yeah. But that was a bit of courage, and also a little sense of pride as well. And even though when I went back, I only spoke like a 5-year-old level kid in Japanese, I knew that back in American school, I did very well in school. I had really good grades. So I'm sure I could, as long as I learned the language properly, I can perform very well in Japan too. So I had that sense of, how would I say it? A sense of
knowing you did it before, you could do it again.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the confidence that I had. I tried to be strong in that sense. And of course, there's a lot of things that I probably held down deep inside, the insecurity and not being able to make friends from the get-go and not be able to converse. And there's a lot of conversations that I can't get immersed to because I don't understand the culture. I don't understand all the TV programs or music, all the kids that are doing. So it's just very hard to relate. And for me, it was like, if I tried to make the effort and try to learn the language properly, maybe they will open up. And that was the same thing when I was back in the US when I was 5 years old. It was the same. Didn't know anything, didn't know the language, but you just have to persevere in that sense. And you just need to have that courage to keep going because, who you are as you're inside is not how people view you. That's two different things. And I don't know why, but I understood that in a sense. Nobody knows who I am. So I just have to be who I am. That's the mentality I just had to hold.
That's great. And I derailed you there. You went back to Japan and you went to high school, essentially finished your high school there and then went into university. Yes. Yeah. And then where'd you go from there? So that's when you entered into the finance industry, correct?
Yes, exactly.
There's always a passion.
I was a person that actually liked arts and doing things.
Interesting.
Yeah, like music, really liked reading and all these things. And I didn't really have a clear passion of what I wanted to do when I grew up. It was just, it was completely a blur. At the time, I just thought, you know what, I'm just going to get a job because I don't think I know what I want to do. So I'll just go with the flow. And working for an investment bank at the time was a very prestigious job. And I spoke English. So it was a very easy path to go because they were looking for Japanese college students who spoke English fluently. So I got into JPMorgan as a FX option trader, and which was completely out of my league because I took political science as a degree in university. And then I don't know why they would hire me to do some complicated financial products in investment banks. So obviously, as you can imagine, I didn't really last very long in that position. So I was fired in about a year and a half. And I was forced to rethink what I want to do. And, but I still wanted to be in the finance industry. I think looking back, I wanted to stick to it. I chose a path and said, you know what, I can't just back out just because I had a job that was not appropriate for me. There must be something in finance that I can do. And I wanted to prove to myself that I could stick it. And I could actually succeed. You didn't let that firing
put you down. You were like, I'm going to figure this out where the right place is for me.
Yeah. It took about 3 months to find a job. And during that time, I researched the whole finance industry and tried to figure out what is potentially suitable for me, what is lucrative, what are people looking at. And at that time, Japan was going through a lot of financial problems by the government, and they were looking at banks. And they were asking the banks to dispose a lot of the non-performing loans, which means loans that are in default held by the Japanese bank that they racked up during the 1980s bubble that Japan experienced. And it took them about 10 years to decide what they were going to do with these defaulted loans. And a lot of American and probably European investment banks were acquiring bulks of these portfolios of distressed loans and trying to recover them. The Japanese banks didn't really know what to do with them. They just left them there to rot. But these American banks figured out a way to re-engage with the borrowers and come up with a restructuring plan for these companies so that they can pay those loans back in some way or form. And that was very intellectually stimulating for me because you have to learn law, you have to learn proper, forecasting companies' cash flows, you have to learn about their business. So there's a lot of elements in there that I thought would be very interesting and academically interesting for me to pursue. I got into that first by being the loan collector of these portfolios.
What was that like?
That was actually, honestly, looking back, I think that was the most enjoyable time for me in my career.
Why?
So I get to meet so many different people in Japan. I travel across the whole country, meeting these companies, and they were talking about their problems about back in the 80s. Japanese banks had all these salespeople had quotas that they had to meet, and they were pushing loans to people even though they didn't want it, and they have to collateralize their houses or their companies' buildings and all these things. And a lot of sad stories, obviously, but you get to feel the person and you try to come up with a way to help them in a way. I wasn't coming at it as a position as a debt holder and telling them you got to pay me back now. It was more like, how can we help you so that we can get rid of your debt? That was my mental approach. Maybe some others weren't thinking like that, but for me, that was a way for me to help them out of the situation and learning about their business models and their cash flows and scraping through them so that I can find something that they can potentially improve in their business so that they can generate some cash to pay back their loans. That really, and I was like in my early 20s during that time. It really stimulated me in a way that to learn about business, learn about finance, learn about all these restructuring laws and everything. There was a really boatload of information that I need to absorb, which really stimulated me. And I just look
Right.
back at it.
And basically in the end there, so essentially you were going to these people who were in debt and owed money, and you were going in there and you were helping them figure out how to restructure what they were doing so that they could make extra money and pay the debt down. So essentially you were leaving them in a much better position than they were because they had these new systems that were now producing more money and I would imagine better productivity around.
Yes,
Fantastic.
that's right. Yeah.
What a great thing to be doing. Yeah. You gotta be feeling good.
Yeah. It almost had a philanthropical kind of, in a way, or it's just very soul nourishing in that sense, because it was not
Yeah.
like cutthroat finance. It was more human skills that you're building at the same time.
Oh, it's
And
fantastic. Much better than just give me your money or else. I'm gonna
yeah, exactly. It'll just force you into bankruptcy. Yeah. So
Yeah.
that was a great time. I did that for about 2 years, and then I moved on to the investment side. So with the knowledge that I have, I can go through the borrower's information and have a sense of how the borrower is going to react or how they're going to think, and potentially what kind of restructuring plans we can think for them. So then I can make better projections on at what price shall we buy these portfolios of bad loans. I spent about, let's say, 7-8 years doing that after that, investing in these distressed loans. But in 2008, that kind of came to a screeching halt with the global financial crisis.
Yeah. So was that another let go, I would imagine, because so many people were at that time.
Yeah, no, I was completely subject to that. So the investment banks were using their own balance sheet or their own money to invest in these portfolios. It was not external money like a fund. The global financial crisis hit. All these banks had to scale back from all these investments into these risky assets.
Yeah.
And they wanted to do a more stable job, like being a sales or doing something a little bit more light in that sense. That's not balance sheet heavy in that sense.
Yeah.
So after that,
how'd you deal with that time? Because that's,
that was another
rough time.
time. Yeah, that was another wake up point for me, because then I got let go and I had to think about what I'm going to do next. And, and again, it was like 3 or 4 months of soul searching for me, what I should be doing next, where I should be going as well. And at that time, I was thinking, have I really reached where I wanted to go? I went from loan collecting to investments at investment banks. What's the next step? What's a better step? And I was thinking, anybody who's done investing would always want to go into hedge funds. And I haven't really achieved that yet. I got to do this because it's the right time, because if investment banks are not going to invest with their own capital, then hedge funds are the only place that they're going to be investing. So I sent out a lot of resumes to different hedge funds. And then I wanted to pursue doing what I was doing, investing in these distressed companies. And I landed a job with a hedge fund that was based in Singapore. And
is there anything that you feel has helped you land these jobs? Because you clearly, each time you've made a change, you've changed into something a little different, which isn't always easy. And you're getting jobs in really great places. Is there anything that you feel has helped you get these positions?
Yeah, I think that a lot of people use their achievements to get a good position in their next role. And for me, I always stuck to why I want to do things. And it's not about like how I do things, because a lot of times when you do these interviews, they always make you do like a case study. So they want to know how you do things. But in the end, I always revert back to why I'm doing these things. And that why to me was always important, because I wanted to help these companies get out of a tricky situation. And that being just very authentic to that kind of, I think it helped. Obviously, they were more focused on my skill sets, obviously. But in the end, I just wanted to hold on to that, because if I didn't hold on to that, then it's just comparing skills to other people. And I think there's dozens of people that probably has similar or even better skill sets than I have. But if I didn't have the passion for it, if I didn't understand why I'm doing this, then there's nothing extra that I can give in those interviews. So that's really what nice. Really focused on quite a lot. And I know nowadays you have your Simon Sinek's and everybody talk about the why and all these things. But for me, I was more, I didn't watch those kind of videos and stuff. And it was before the time of YouTubes and stuff. But to me, if I didn't have passion into something, I couldn't do it. I'm a person just can do 0 or 10. I can't do anything in the middle. And that's been very consistent throughout my childhood as well. So even at university, I took classes that I liked, and I did spectacularly well in those classes, but the ones that I was forced to take, I did spectacularly horribly. Horrible.
I understand this.
Yeah.
Well, that was really great answer overall. I think everyone can take a little something from the answer as to being true to your why, as to why you're doing it. Because especially in the interview process, you're right. Everyone, there's a lot of people in there who can do the exact job, but the person who brings that little extra as to why are they there and what brings that passion to them, and companies, people know that drives people. You can see that it's palpable. So yes, that is something really important. So you get yourself into the hedge funds and you start learning hedge funds, this whole new area. And then where do you go from there? What happens then?
Yeah. So I continue doing what I'm doing, but the tide has turned quite a lot since I started investing in distressed credit or distressed companies, because those type of opportunities that I saw back in, the early 2000s were almost completely gone. And my role has expanded into looking at the broader Asia Pacific and looking at different jurisdictions, learning different types of bankruptcy laws and all that. And what's interesting about Asia Pacific is that it's such a broad region that you have countries generally sophisticated like Japan to other countries that are still building their bankruptcy laws and all these other things, right? So it's not like where you land in US and you have the same federal law for everything, or like in Europe where a lot of the laws are very somewhat similar to each other, and then it's more sophisticated. So it's a very difficult region to invest in because of these laws are not really put into place properly. There's a lot of corruption. There's a lot of backdoor dealings that happen behind the scenes that you can't really see from public information. And it requires a lot more digging into these companies, who are the people behind it, which is quite interesting, but it doesn't really translate into returns. So what I used to joke about all the time for APAC is that you do a lot more work for little returns. and
not always the best.
Yeah, not always the best. Yes. And that was a frustration for me. But also at the same time, you get to learn different cultures, business practices. And that was very enjoyable for me. And there's a lot of things that you can learn. My colleagues in the US, my colleagues in Europe are very extremely intelligent people, and I can learn from them. And the culture of that company overall, about sharing information and it's not comparing who's better than who. It's more about let's make it as a company and share as much information with your colleagues as much as possible so that we all can actually, make money. And there are hedge funds that are just very more cutthroat, where one person is tied to their own P&L and they get a percentage of the profits and all that. And if they don't perform, then they just get fired. The company I was working for was not like that. But at the same time, I was doing this for 15 plus years, and I was getting a little bit tired. I was starting to think about, and at this point I was married. I had my first son, and going into a different phase where I can't just stay in the office for a very long time and spend my time as much as how I want to. I wanted to balance out family. I wanted to think about my career path as well, and also redig into why I'm doing this. Where's my passion? And as I went along, I was feeling a little bit burnt out in a way. As I said, it's a lot of work for very little return. So if I'm getting little returns from the work I'm doing, it's not very efficient. And I wasn't really sure if I really wanted to continue this for much longer, because it just wears on you after a while. And once you learn a lot of things and you're pretty comfortable with it, it starts to become autopilot as well.
Exactly. And I think a lot of people find themselves in this spot in life, and that burnt out spot, and going through the motions and just living, if you will, day to day, doing that thing. And a lot of people stay in that burnt out spot. What motivated you to move?
Yeah. So I thought I started from being fired from this particular job that I started off, and I went into banking and I went to hedge funds, and I was working for one of the top hedge funds in the world. And I was thinking, have I made, and that question, and also, am I enjoying it, wasn't really matching together. It wasn't really gelling together. The more I succeeded in hedge funds or in my career, the less I actually enjoyed it, to be honest. Yeah. I have this feeling of prestige, but then I don't find myself really enjoying that too much.
You weren't satisfied.
Yeah. And I thought maybe it's because I'm working for someone is maybe the problem, I just couldn't really understand it. So in 2015, with the help of another friend of mine, I started a hedge fund in Singapore. And I thought, if I run my own thing, right, then that's kind of the top class that I can even think of. And if I don't make it here, then I probably don't like this job in the beginning. So it was like my last chip, and I'm just going all in on my cards and saying, if this doesn't work, then I'll just burn. And that's what I did. And I ran that fund for about 2-3 years. And we started off about 200 million raised, and from organic growth, we grew that into a 1 billion asset under management hedge fund, which is, in my view, is really amazing. Yes,
it's incredible for most people's views.
And we were doing very well. Returns were great. But again, I just couldn't leave this feeling that I'm not actually happy in what I'm doing. I've lost that whole passion about when I first started, like being able to help people and work with people to get them out of like trouble situations. That was very satisfying. But now I'm just investing equities and investing in bonds and things, and just for the sake of trying to make money. It wasn't really satisfying. It was just numbers. And I lost that core reason why I stuck to finance, or in that particular investment style. And I thought, should I return to that, or am I just really done here? And so in 2018, I said, this is not working out for me. I'm actually not a nice person anymore. I'm always grumpy, right? And I was seeing myself interact with my family, and I'm not really in a very good mood most of the time. And at work, I'm not that happy either, even though I grew this into a really, large company that I wanted to make it into. So I said, you know what, maybe it's time that I should just make a change for myself. And maybe I should just find something that I would, again, feel passionate about. And I left it. It was for other people. Like, even when I spoke to my mom about it, she was like, you're at the highlight, the highest point that you could be in your career. And why are you just ditching that and just walking away from it? I don't understand. And I got the same.
You.
Yeah.
I do. I want to applaud you.
Thank you. I must have been nuts. I don't know.
You were listening to yourself. You were listening to yourself. And that's a gift.
Yeah. And I struggled with that decision quite a lot. And one thing that I really took to heart is, what is it to be happy? And I thought about, what is it to be happy? Is it something that I achieve? Is it something that I look for and grasp? Or is it something that I shed with negativities so that I can come to this happiness state? And I actually thought it was the latter. You can always, because I tried to achieve happiness by getting all these privileges and growing a big business and earning a lot of money and all these things. And it wasn't making me happy. So it's not something that I need to achieve. There's some goal there that I achieve and then I become happy. It's not like that. It was about shedding all the negativities in your life, the things that you don't like about your life, to achieve that happiness. That's what, I discovered when I was thinking about this. So I decided to leave the job. I decided to leave a lot of things behind. I'm actually pretty happy. I earn way less than I used to before. And I could have been much more comfortable financially than I was before, but I left that. But so far right now, I'll talk about this at the end, but when I left, it just felt like everything just dissolved. All these negativities just dissolved for me. And I was actually quite content. I was happy that I wasn't waking up early in the morning to go to work and then coming back and then having to try to be a good father when I was really in a bad mood.
Yeah.
And I was interacting with my family much better. And I took about maybe 2 years off and not do anything. And I thought about what should I do with my life during that time. But I was really content without no job. But obviously I have to continue. I was 40 years old, and talk about midlife crisis, right? Like, everything happened exactly to according to what midlife crisis should look like. Yeah. And but I didn't go out and buy a Porsche. I actually threw it away.
That's fantastic. I love that. Yeah. And you did the right thing. You gave yourself time to figure it out. That's exactly what you needed to do. You needed to figure out what was going to fill that that need inside that give you that satisfaction. And what did you come to? What did you find that you wanted to do?
So I started investing with my own money in things that I wanted to invest in. So if you're working for a hedge fund, you're actually restricted to what you can invest in because there's all these restrictions around insider trading and, being more in line with your hedge fund rather than investing in your own money. So I wasn't really allowed to invest freely. So I had that time to think about, okay, I have some money now. So let me start investing in other things, and invested in equities and all over the world, and looked at every type of asset class that I wasn't exposed to. And I came upon investing in gold. But I thought I have these, you can buy gold like in bullions, and you have to put it in a safety deposit box. And you have to, if you're going to move, then you have to move this thing all around the world. And it's not very portable. And I thought, what is something better than investing in gold that's more digital? And there are ETFs and other financial products that reflects the price of gold, but that's not really gold because you can't really cash it in for gold. So to me, that didn't really make sense to me. So just going through the internet and just reading up on other alternatives when I stumbled upon cryptocurrency. Now, yes, there is an argument to say, yes, it can, Bitcoin and all these cryptocurrencies can be a digital option for gold, because of its finite and the way that it's created. And there's a lot of economics behind Bitcoin that does reflect what gold, or a better version of gold in that sense, and is portable. But what I came upon is that I found that cryptocurrencies is not really creating gold, right? It was originally created for a financial system that is not associated with the current existing financial system. And Bitcoin was created in 2008 with the aim to become a digital cash. And that is not exposed by the monetary policies of central banks in the world, where they're printing money out of thin air and potentially causing inflation, as we're starting to see today. And this was created so that it was not regulated. It was not seen as a government type of money, but it was people's money. And in this way, you can have your own sound financial system that doesn't get influenced by politics, by technocrats in the world that they think the world should look this way. And when I thought about the use cases of this money, I didn't think about paying in Bitcoin or cryptocurrencies. I was thinking about, there are countries in this world that experience massive hyperinflation, like Venezuela or Argentina or Turkey. These countries always have experienced failing monetary systems, that they don't trust the government anymore. And whatever they make in their own currency, it just inflates away into the paper. And they always have to rely on converting their own currency into US dollars or gold or some alternative that doesn't inflate away. And so my wife is from Uruguay, and it's a country that's neighboring Argentina. And she used to tell me that because of these failed monetary policies by Argentina, people were going into Uruguay with suitcases of cash to bank in Uruguayan banks.
Yeah.
And so that's the situation that people experience when you're living in these countries. It's hard to carry cash. It's hard to carry gold. But if it's a digital version of it, and if you can transport between countries without having to be exposed by the immigration officers and et cetera, to be caught holding bags full of cash, cryptocurrency is the answer. And so with cryptocurrencies, you can keep it in your thumbnail and travel across borders, open up let's say, crypto exchange account, convert that into whatever local currency that is, and you could cash out. I'll give you an example. My wife has a friend in Argentina, and she was telling me that if she sells her house in Argentina, it's going to be in US dollars, because everything that's high in value is priced in US dollars. It's not in Argentine pesos. So if she sells it, she has to put it in a bank account. And if you put it into a bank account, there's a high likely chance that the government is going to confiscate it to defend their own currency against, because yes. So there's a lot of bank runs all the time in Argentina because of this. And so she doesn't want to put it in a bank account, but there's no way she's going to hold a lot of this cash. So if she wants to migrate into another country, she can't take that US dollars with her because it's a lot of money, and you get stopped because of that. So she was asking me, how do I transport this elsewhere? Because I'm going to sell my house and get out of Argentina because I can't stand this anymore. I told her, why don't you convert that US dollars when you get it into cryptocurrency? So you don't have to hold it in a bank account for a long time. You just immediately, when it hits the bank account, you have your crypto exchange account, use that to convert it into Bitcoin or whatever it is, put it in your thumb drive. And then when you migrate to another country, you can create a bank account and also a crypto exchange account and just fund that the cryptocurrency, and that crypto exchange, convert that into your local currency. And then voila, you have
Really
your cash
smart.
at the other end.
Really smart.
So that's my kind of aha moment of thinking that's how cryptocurrency can work. And there's a lot of people in these kind of troubled situations that they have to rely on US dollars, but US dollars is also not actually becoming the most stable currency in the world either. And there has to be something else. And cryptocurrency was the answer for me. And also there's also countries that have restrictive capital flows outside of the country. So like China or Vietnam, there's a lot of countries that doesn't allow their citizens to take currency out of their country. And cryptocurrency can also help with that as well.
Solution for that. You've made me look at it in a completely different way that I had not been. So that's really interesting. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Sorry, I just went into a tangent of and I talk about cryptocurrencies. But so understanding all that and how it can help people, that kind of that became the reason why I was so hooked on it, because I can think of so many business models around cryptocurrencies that can help people, and that's why I started I started to think about I want to do something in cryptocurrencies. I don't need to invest in crypto. I was not interested in trading crypto and all that. I was thinking about what kind of business models can we create to help people in difficult situations so that they can alleviate the situation that they're in. And that's how I started my own company called Blockshine Singapore. And we were creating products to enable those things to happen, where people, let's say in Philippines, they're working all over the world, and a great portion of their GDP actually comes from their foreign workers remitting cash back into and sharing it with their family. So we were trying to create these systems where they can use cryptocurrency instead of using the likes of Western Union that they take 10% on each side for commission. And so that's how I got into the whole crypto blockchain world.
So interesting. Now, you've done so many different things within this finance industry, and you've been incredibly successful in all of these different areas. And I really appreciate your story and how you shared it with us, the different realizations that you've had along the way. I'm curious, based on all of your experience, what your personal definition of success is. What does success mean to you? And based on that, what do you believe is key to having continued success throughout life?
I think being true to yourself is the key to being successful. I think that you should not listen to what, social media says, or what the, big entrepreneurs say, or big financial figures say in the world, that money, making big businesses make money and all these things. To me, didn't really sit in well with me, because I experienced that and it didn't really make me happy. But I think about when I started investing, as I mentioned before, for me, helping people overcome hard situations was something that what I enjoyed, and soul fulfilling for me. And even with the cryptocurrency, that feeds my soul. And staying true to that and trying to, even if it doesn't make as much money, it doesn't really matter, because you have to what you end up in the end. And I always think about my deathbed for some reason. I'm thinking about myself in the deathbed, reliving what I did in the past, and what probably would make me feel that I've experienced this life in this body of Takatoshi Shibayama. What was it that made me really happy that I accomplished something? Is something that that I've done what I wanted to do. It is thinking that, and it's not a measurement of monetary success or anything like that. It's about, did I do what I wanted to do? And a lot of people are just constrained to, I have to do this. But did I live freely so that I just did what I wanted to do? I think that's, to me, is the measurement of success, and being true to that and sticking by that, even though there's a lot of negativities coming at your way, or you're not making as much money, or etc. If I could do that, I think I'll be in a much better situation than how I was before, where I was always grumpy and angry, and maybe I had more money. But I think about me in the deathbed, I didn't do anything that I wanted to do, but I just have this money. So I just think
Not
about my
worth
end
it.
game. It was not worth it. This lifetime, this life journey was not really worth it, because it's not what you end up at the end. It's about looking through the 80 or 90, whatever years that you lived, and saying, was this journey really worth it? Was it fun? Was it a fun journey? And I really want to have a good journey in this life. I don't know what will come next. Maybe there's heaven or hell. Maybe there's reincarnation. I don't know. But all I know is that this lifetime, this short lifetime that I have, I want it to make it the best. And I want to say I loved this journey.
Yes. Oh, yes. I completely agree with all of that. And it's what we all need to be focusing on. Those are the questions that we need to be asking ourselves and thinking about. So thank you for that. Now, out of everything that you've done, what would you say has been your greatest success, and why? And what did you learn from it? And you can give me one or two. I know it's hard when it's like, what's the greatest? It's like, how do you choose?
I don't think it's an event. So I look at it in terms of the progress of time, the journey for me. So if I didn't really have down points, I would have never had the greatest points either. So you have to love them both. And I embrace it now in hindsight. Of course, at that time, I was not in a great situation and struggling. But in the end, that nothing eternal, right? So situations always change. But if you don't struggle at the time that you had to, you wouldn't had the accomplishments later either. So you have to love them both. So I'm trying to love whatever happened in my life, even if there were regretful times or shameful times or enjoyable times. I'm trying to love all of that, because life is a journey, right? And if you don't love your journey, there's nothing. So there's no single event or point in my life that I like to highlight and say, this was why I feel successful or not. I think it's the whole thing. And it's all the things that I did, my moving to the US and going back to Japan. All these things affect who I am right now. That everything, even so, I would say all those kind of points, that life-changing points in my lifetime, was a predecessor to successful life that I feel like I'm having right now.
Yes. Oh, I love it. I completely agree. You're absolutely right that the times of greatest challenge and difficulty, they lead to our greatest successes. It's the foundation for those successes. And I love that the way you put it, that you find beauty and you love all of the pieces of your life. So I think that's wonderful. I'm curious, have you ever felt stuck in life at any time?
Yeah, all the time.
I feel like this is a familiar feeling for people. So what do you do about it when you feel that way?
Yeah. So this is a little bit of a hack that I usually do when I feel stuck, is I try something completely new. No, it could be anything. So every year I try to I try to think about what new things can I do in my life. So about 2 years ago, I've started to play cello. I always played the guitar. So I always been a very music loving person, and I played guitar since I was 14. But somehow, when I look back when I was a child and in school, I also picked up learning trombone at the time, and I regretted it because I actually liked the sound of the cello. And it just had I don't know, it's like it resonates with the tone of human voices. It's in the same kind of sound wave. So it just feels very warm when I hear it. I went to my older son and said, how would you like to learn cello? And I'll learn with you. But only because I wanted to play.
So fun. It's fantastic.
So I started learning cello. So that's one example. But every year I try to do something a little bit new and then spice things up so that I can always feel like I'm active in doing something. So I'm not always doing the same thing over and over. So also like sports. So I've been athlete. I would consider myself an athlete all throughout my childhood. And also that also contributes to who I am as well, because you're always, if you're doing sports, you always lose and you have to figure out how you can overcome it and to be a better athlete. That's like constant all the time. And I think that makes you a better person as well, in the sense you can challenge adversity, you can overcome adversity. And so I've been practicing jujitsu for about 10 years now. And this also, I always find that it's a sport where even though you think at a certain level, there's always somebody better than you, even though they're less experienced or something. I mean, also I'm getting older. I don't have the cardio that I used to have when I was, 16 years old. And there's always this challenges, even though you get better, you still have bigger challenges. I feel as you're getting better, there's more and more challenges because you don't see the challenges when you're ripe. You don't see the bigger world of that sport when you're starting out. But once you get better and you acquire all these knowledges, more challenges, you see a lot more difficulties in this sport to get better. And that's also challenging for me as well. So I just keep up with that, like podcasting. So I started this podcasting about a year and a half ago. And that was also challenging because I was very stage shy kind of person. I don't like to talk in public. If we're in a large group of people, I'm usually the quiet one that doesn't really speak, more of an introvert.
How did you get past it to get your podcast out there? Because I can contest. There's a lot of emotions that come up when you put out a podcast.
Yes, exactly. So because I knew that being in this blockchain crypto world, I need to get on stage, and because there's a lot of conferences around it. So I actually took a lesson on public speaking. And that actually made me quite confident. And that was that I put myself up to as well. And I learned all the kind of skill sets and to be necessary and actually not be so frightened on stage. And then, but all this COVID thing hit and I was thinking there's got to be a better way for me to continue. I don't like to do like virtual conferences because you're not really in front of people in that sense. And I started recording this podcast in the studio prior to COVID, but I had to bring it in at home and buy all these microphones and stuff. And I had to learn how to do video editing and I learned all that through last year because I knew nothing about equipment. I didn't know anything about these softwares and video and audio editing. So I watched tons of YouTube videos and read a lot of blogs and stuff to learn how to do all these things. And then I could keep up with my public appearances, even though it's recorded, but it still gets me activated to speak. And I want to keep this up because it's actually really engaging. You learn a lot of stuff. So my podcast encompasses all the, kind of businesses and technologies that we're building today. So it's not just on cryptocurrencies, but I talk about AI or gene editing and all these different things. And along with spirituality and philosophical topics as well. So, because I feel that we're building all these businesses and technologies and if you don't have the ethical values to create something that's useful for people, not for profit. It changes humans in a way that it's for the betterment of society. That's the business that I believe we should be creating. So that's what I want that I talk about in my podcast, how to become better as a human being to create a better society. So you have to start with yourself and then project that into the world.
Oh, we need more of that. So good. And where can people find more information about you if they want to learn about your podcast or learn about what you're doing? Is there any place that they can go?
Yeah. So my Future Design podcast is on YouTube and all the major audio podcast sites. And I have a website, www.fdpod.co. And I'm active on LinkedIn. My full name is there. And I don't really do other socials, to be honest, because I think it's a waste of time.
Yeah, perfect. We'll add those LinkedIns to that so people can connect with you on LinkedIn and take a look at everything. This has been absolutely wonderful, though. I have so enjoyed our talk. Before you go, I want to ask you my last question. What is it that you are sure of in life?
Wow, that's a big question. I think your action is the only thing that's sure in life. I think that your reality that you're creating is your own doing. So there's a lot of things in the world that you can't control, but things that you can control, it's the reality that you're creating for yourself is really based on yourself. So what I'm sure about is that the reality I'm creating, whether it be trying to be happy or being helpful to other people or taking something negative comments to me and then feeling a certain way, those things are in your control. So the reality that you create for yourself, how you see the world, how you want others, well, I wouldn't say how others, but how you want to see the world is really based on how you think the world should be like. So, what you want to be sure about, and I think this is very true because I experienced it for myself as well, is that you have to take action for yourself. You can't let others decide how your life is going to be. Your life is for your own to create. And then things that you can't control, just let it go.
That's all you can do,
Just let it
right?
go. Yes, exactly. Because you can take all those things that you can't control and then feel negative about yourself.
Yeah.
But you can also make the choice not to care. And then that's your kind of world. If you want to keep your world positive, then try to keep everything positive. Everything, how you feel about this world all depends on you.
Yes, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. And it is a choice. You get to make that choice.
Yeah, it's a choice.
Thank you so much for this. It's been fantastic.
Yeah, thank you very much. I had a great time.
I loved Takatoshi's story. There is so much to learn from him. When he graduated and he was looking at potential professions, he really didn't know what he wanted to do, which, let's be honest, is the experience for a large majority of people. It's really hard to know what you want to do at a young age, especially as you're still trying to figure out life. Takatoshi decided that he wanted to give the financial world a try. He found a role in the financial industry, but found it wasn't quite right, and he ended up being fired after a year and a half. Instead of throwing himself right back into a similar role or giving up the financial industry completely, Takatoshi spent time thinking about what it was he really wanted to do. He knew that he wanted to stick with the finance industry and prove himself, so he did the wise thing. He spent time researching the industry and figuring out what was most suitable with his personality. He found a loan collector opportunity and surprisingly found it to be one of the most enjoyable times of his career. This is because instead of focusing on the money owed, he focused on the people who were in debt. Why were they in debt? He learned about their business models and he helped them make business changes so that they could grow and pay off their debt. His focus was not on how could he help himself grow in his business. His focus was on how he could help others grow in theirs. It is no coincidence that this ended up being one of Takatoshi's most enjoyable careers. This is one of the key universal truths, one of the golden threads that are found through all of these stories. When a person begins to focus on the value they can bring others, this seems to be the catalyst for true overall success, life satisfaction, and fulfillment. What I've learned is the overall key to success is discovering and honoring your personal gifts, figuring out how to fill yourself up with those gifts, and then once you are full and you have grown strong in that right place, you follow it up with, now how can I use these gifts to be of service to others? Now, when the financial crisis hit, Takatoshi found himself let go in a difficult economy. Once again, he spent the time thinking about what it was that he wanted in his life, what would make sense for his next step. And once again, he focused in on a new area of learning and growth within his chosen industry. I want to note that this is a huge key to success. The pausing and the taking time to reflect on what you really want. A large percentage of the population never stops moving long enough to focus on even thinking about the question of what do I want? Or they've been told by others who and what they are for so long that they have not considered looking within for themselves. Or they are so consumed with satisfying their base needs that they think they do not have the luxury of wants. This is a mistake. It all starts with the wants. There is power in finding clarity and getting clear on your goals. This process, it triggers your reticular activating system, causing you to see the world in a new way. You will start to notice the potential all around you, and it will feel like doors suddenly start to open. Takatoshi is a perfect example of this. He figured out his wants, and then once he found clarity, he went out and landed excellent roles within his chosen area. Takatoshi was continuously hired within leading companies every time he decided to make a change within the financial industry. His secret: he knew what he wanted, and he focused in on his why during his interview. And this was easy for Takatoshi to do because he had spent time thinking about what he wanted and why. Again, when you know what you want, when you are clear on your goals, magic happens. When a company is interviewing and they are talking with many people who have similar skill sets who could do the job, they will look at the overall accomplishments of these candidates and they will compare. But the person who can express why they want that particular job and why they want that particular company will have an advantage over everyone else. Companies want people who want their company, who want their position, not just any company or any position. Now think about it. Are you more attracted to someone who says, I just want a new girlfriend or boyfriend? Really, any girlfriend or boyfriend will do as long as they are okay with X. Or are you attracted to someone who sees the special beauty in you, who does not want others, they only want you? It's more intoxicating, right? It's the same in business. Knowing what you want and why you want it is a powerful force that is felt and respected. Takatoshi realized he wanted to get into hedge funds and learn that corner of the finance world. He once again got an excellent job. He excelled as a hedge fund manager for 15 years. He was highly successful at his work. But after so many years, he found himself once again feeling burned out, feeling unsatisfied. He was working for one of the top hedge funds in the world, but he was not enjoying it. The more he succeeded in traditional financial terms, the less he enjoyed it. He had the money, he had the prestige, but he did not have the fulfillment. He was not satisfied. He was not happy. Takatoshi decided that it was time to try and go out on his own. He was going to create his own hedge fund and see if he could find that satisfaction that he was searching for. He started the fund with $200 million and grew it to $1 billion in asset under management. He was doing extremely well. He was making tons of money. He would be seen as a huge success by many people's outward societal standards. But as we have learned from all of these stories, is that the societal view of money being the mark of success is entirely false. Takatoshi found himself at the peak of his financial game. And even though he had grown this hedge fund into exactly what he had dreamed of, he was not happy. He was always grumpy at work. He was grumpy at home. This was no way to live. He was living an unsatisfied life. And he realized that he needed to make a change to build the life that would bring him fulfillment. I want to applaud Takatoshi for this decision. It could not have been easy, and I'm sure family and friends were asking him, why? Why would you leave this incredible business that you have built for yourself? It shows. incredible strength of character, an incredible strength of spirit to recognize when you are unhappy in a situation, especially one with such golden wrapping, and actually do something about it. Takatoshi's experience is one we can all learn from. Once again, Takatoshi took time off. He reflected and gave himself space to get back in touch with himself and what is most important to him. What he learned from his experience is invaluable. He had thought that if he grew a big business, if he earned so much money, then he would be happy. He thought happiness was tied to goals. But through his experiences, he learned this belief was wrong. Happiness isn't about attaining a certain amount of money. It's about shedding the things that you don't like in your life and filling it with the things that you do. Once Takatoshi was able to leave the things he did not like behind, he found his life filling up with the good. The negative feelings dissolved, and he was left with that feeling of contentment. What is in your life that you no longer want? What are the things that you don't want that are taking up your time? Can you shed these from your life? Now, what are the things that bring you joy? What are the things that fill you up? The things that make you smile? Can you add more of these to your life? Keep subtracting the negative and adding the positive, and you will find a wonderful recipe for happiness. Takatoshi was able to merge the things he loved within the finance industry and the aspects of the work he enjoyed the most in helping others, and brought that together in his cryptocurrency work building a new company. He found his way by listening to himself. As he shared, being true to yourself is key to being successful in life. Do not listen to society. Do not listen to social media. Do not listen to the financial figures saying big business and big money equals success. Takatoshi experienced the peak of both, and he found himself unhappy. You must create your own definition of success and own it. Take Takatoshi's advice. Imagine yourself on your deathbed, reliving what you did in your past. What do you feel proud of? What do you regret? What makes you happy about your life? Did you do what you wanted to do? Will you be remembered how you want to be remembered? What kind of legacy are you leaving your loved ones and the world? Did you have fun on your journey? Was your journey worth it? What are the answers that have come up for you? If you are not living the life that you will feel good about in that moment of reckoning, here is the good news. Today, you are alive. You're alive, and you can do something to change it. Get in touch with the answers to these questions and go out and create the life you were meant to live. I absolutely loved Takatoshi's answer for his greatest success. To me, this is one of life's greatest lessons to learn. He shared that for him, success has been the enjoyment and respect of his journey. He understands that if he had not had his down points in life, he would not have reached his great points. His struggles have led to his accomplishments, and he has learned that whatever happens in this life, regardless of how it might be viewed by others or how difficult it might be for himself, he wants to embrace and love the whole thing. All of the ups and downs, all of the life-changing points, all of the pieces of his experiences that create the magical tapestry that is his life. I love this. This makes me think of the Chinese proverb about life that goes something like this. A farmer and his son had a beloved stallion who helped the family earn a living. One day, the horse ran away, and their neighbors exclaimed, "Your horse! It ran away! What terrible luck!" The farmer replied, "Maybe yes, maybe no. We shall see." A few days later, the horse returned home, leading a few wild mares back to the farm as well. The neighbors shouted out, "Your horse has returned and brought several horses home with him. What great luck!" The farmer replied, "Maybe yes, maybe no. We shall see." Later that week, the farmer's son was trying to break one of the mares, and she threw him to the ground, breaking his leg. The villagers cried out, "Oh, your son broke his leg. What terrible luck!" The farmer replied, "Maybe yes, maybe no. We shall see." A few weeks later, soldiers from the National Army marched through town, recruiting all the able-bodied boys for the army. They did not take the farmer's son, who was still recovering from his injury. Friends shouted, "Your boy is spared! What tremendous luck!" To which the farmer replied, "Maybe yes, maybe no. We shall see." And so on and so forth. No event can be judged as good or bad, as only time will reveal the whole story. The next time some perceived negative happens in your life, can you reserve your judgment and think, maybe yes, maybe no. We shall see. The universe is constantly changing. Perhaps there is something in this change meant for the betterment of me. Finally, I loved Takatoshi's answer for what he is sure of in life. That everything you feel about this world is your choice. He knows there is so much in this life that we cannot control, but he is sure that you can control your own action. He is sure that you can control your own thoughts. And he is sure that you can control the reality you create for yourself. So that is my wish for us all, that you take action for yourself and for your wants, keeping your thoughts positive and creating the life of your own personal dreams. Until next time. Thank you for joining us on Fresh Blood. Please subscribe and follow us on all streaming services, including Apple Podcasts, Amazon, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and Player FM. You can also follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Fresh Blood Podcast. I would love your help in spreading these stories and important messages. Please give us a like and share with a friend. Your help is greatly appreciated. I hope you make today a most fulfilling day.